Does anybody have any questions? One thing that I'm gonna need from you guys, not that it really makes a big difference because everybody's presenting on the same day. Um, just like last time, I'm gonna ask, okay, which group wants to present first or second or third? So it's gonna be based off of who sends me, again, an email telling me we want to present first, we want to present second. So um, I do believe the way it's going to look. I have to ask John if it's okay still because this is what we did. I think it'll be okay. But it 15-minute presentation, and again, so you'll be timed 15 minutes, and there are. I'm assuming there's going to be a little bit of feedback from John, maybe like 5 minutes, I suppose, of feedback, and so the next presentation will happen after that. So think of it as sort of like from 4 to 4:20 will be group one. From 4:20 to 4:40 will be the second group, whoever decides to go second, and so on and so forth. So um, think about it. Send me an email. Email me your preference in terms of when you want to go. You don't have to listen to the other. Once you've presented, you don't have to listen to the other students present. It's up to you if you want to, but you know, it's it's completely up to you. I'm not forcing you to stick around. Okay, awesome. So just again, if it matters to you, about going first, then please send me an email. If it doesn't matter, then you can go last. It's fine. The best presentation can be the first, or the best presentation can be the last. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter when you go, but some students think it matters. I don't really think it does. Anyways, let's finish talking about live entertainment. So I believe this is where I left off. I hadn't talked about writers yet. I finished talking about the process to secure a venue if you happen to be a promoter. And so, for the most part, generally think about the fact that, hopefully I'm recording this, that most I'm referring to the big bands, right? I'm talking the very popular bands, not talking about somebody who is not that well known. But these big bands, these big performers, these like a U2 or somebody like that, a Beyonce or somebody who's immensely popular who does global tours, they are going to have several types of writers with them. They're not just going to have one type with them. They're going to have several writers, and the writers are going to be different people. So, anyways, that said, the tour writers are going to have all the key contacts here, the booking agency, in terms of the booker, who is the booker, who is the manager or the management firm that represents the talent, who is the tour manager for the talent, who is the production manager for the talent in terms of setting things up on stage. So you're going to have all the different contact numbers for all the different important people on the writer. And so writer number one is going to be the production or the technical writer. And so this is the type of equipment that the act's going to need. So, or lighting equipment. So the production writer or technical writer oftentimes goes to the production folks or to the folks who work at the venue and are responsible for setting up the staging. They're going to want to read the production or technical writer, just in terms of like trying to figure out, okay, they're going to have a piano, we're going to have, this is the way they want the sound set up, this is they want the lighting set up, et cetera, et cetera. Second type of writer, this is a backline writer. So now, if they're going on a tour and they're going to several shows, then the backline writer is essentially not used. And the reason that it's not used is because the larger equipment's already coming with the band. But let's just say that it's a one-off show. One-off show means it's one performance and one performance only. So let's just say that you know a certain band got booked to do a show in, Austin, right? They got booked to do one show, and one show only in Austin. And so they're not going to take their big, large items like the drums or the amps or any of the backline equipment. They're going to expect that the venue is going to provide that equipment for them. So in that case, if it's a one-off show, then the talent is going to send the venue a backline writer. So the backline has, okay, this is all the big equipment that I'm going to need for the show. Now, again, if they're touring, they're going to take all this equipment with them on a big tour. But if, again, it's a one-off show, then the backline writer matters then. Backline. Let me spell that. It's not. The next type of writer is the merchandising writer. And so just like venues have, their rate when it comes to merch, the bands, the big bands or the big performers, the popular performers, have their own merch rate on their rider. And so generally speaking, not always, of course, if the venue wants that popular performer to perform at their venue, they're going to abide by the merchandising rider that the talent is providing them. And so that's the merch rate. And so it could vary, right? It could be, the merch rate could be, let's say 15%, or it could be 17%. It could be 12%, whatever the writer says, right? It varies. And so the merch rate requires most favored nation. Does anybody know what a most favored nation means? MFN? Not even a guess? Okay. So most favored nation means that it's the same rate across the board. In other words, whether it's the Staples Center or the Honda Center or Red Rocks or Madison Square Garden, it doesn't matter. Whatever the venue happens to be, large or small, the Rose Bowl, a SoFi Stadium, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which country you're in. It's the same rate for everybody. It's a most favored nation means it's the same rate for everyone. It doesn't matter if the venue happens to be in a small city, big city. Doesn't matter if the venue is big or small. It's the same rate for every single venue. So whether that's 15%, 17%, it's the same rate for every venue that they perform in across the board. They don't give one rate to one venue and another rate to a different venue. They don't give one rate to a venue because it's international versus another rate because it's domestic. It's the same rate all across the board. How much, and also within the merchandising rider, it's going to have in there how much space the talent buyer will provide. So you know, this is a deal that's negotiated between the talent and the venue or the promoter. They're going to negotiate, okay, we're going to want, you know, 10 booths to sell our merchandise, or the venue might say, well, we only have 7 booths. And so there's going to be a negotiation between the venue and the act in terms of like how much space is going to be provided for the act to sell its t-shirts, it's whatever they're going to sell at the posters, whatever they're going to sell at those booths. No, but good guess, Steph. It's across the board. It's international. It's an international rate to everybody, regardless of country, regardless of venue. Um, needs conditions and requested to protect the act. This is the security rider. So down here, next to the, not the bottom, but next to the bottom, one or above the bottom, is a security rider. So the act wants to avoid obviously riots or people getting hurt at a venue, and so it's going to send out a security rider for the venue. And so if the venue doesn't provide enough security for the act, then the act will refuse to perform in that particular venue. So, for instance, it might say in the rider, we need at least, I don't know, 250 security guards in the venue. We need at least 12 security guards right in front of the stage to keep people off the stage, those sorts of things. So that it's going to be all lined up and detailed in the security rider. And last but not least is the hospitality rider. So hospitality rider, which is the comfort for the artist. And so when I used to work in special events, this is the rider that I got. I got the rider that says, this is the hospitality rider. And so it was my job as a special events person. Okay, since I didn't know that much about, you know, backline equipment or production or those sorts of things, and I didn't own the venue, so I couldn't control the merch. But the one thing that I could control was the hospitality. And so sometimes within the hospitality, they also have like stuff with, okay, what do you need to provide for the green room? The green room is essentially the room for the artists. But also within the hospitality riders, it may have things like, okay, we need to be staying at a 4-star hotel minimum, or 5-star hotel, or 3-star hotel. So it's going to lay out in the hospitality rider what the special events person is supposed to provide the artist in terms of comfort. So when they're staying in that city, they might be required to stay in a certain type of hotel, and they need to have certain items backstage in the green room for the artists. The first rider is production technical. That's for all the folks that are doing all the tech stuff in terms of lighting and setting up the staging, those sorts of things. It's a cool gig, but I've heard it's pretty stressful and long hours, but you get paid pretty well. Anyways, everything's sort of a balance. Anyways, type of promoter, which is leaning over the promotional steps. So there's essentially 2 types of promoters. Essentially, if you think about the world of live entertainment. And so the first type of promoter is in-house. So there's an in-house promoter. So if you think about AEG, or if you think about Live Nation, those are examples of in-house, right? They essentially promote the concert or the event, but they also own the venue. So there's, again, in-house. And the second type of promoter is the outside promoter. So again, number 2 or second type of promoter is the outside. So in this case, right, they don't they're going to just rent the venue, hoping to make their money back. And so again, in-house, think about AEG or Live Nation, that would be an example of in-house. Versus number two, just an outside promoter who rents out the venue, promotes the event, and hopes that they make their money back. So number one is providing initial information. So promotional steps, the first thing that the in-house promoter wants to do or outside promoter wants to do is provide initial information. So you want to convey or communicate to the world, okay, what is going to happen here? So you want to have information like, okay, who's performing, what type of event is going to be, a sporting event, a musical event, a theatrical event, what's going on. And of course, you want to answer the question of like, when will it take place and where will it take place? So again, you want to provide that initial information. The 4 W's, some call it the 5 W's, about what, the who, the what, the when, the where, and even the what, right? And how do you get your tickets? So for instance, is it going to be just strictly get your tickets online, right? Or do you only get them at the venue? Or can you get them at the venue and can you also buy them online? And within the how do you get, you almost want to tell people the price. How much are you going to charge for these tickets? So again, you want to provide initial information, whether you're an in-house promoter or an outside promoter, you want to provide this very important initial information. Number two, step in promotional step is stimulate interest. So in other words, you want to create, essentially a buzz, right? So stimulate interest or create a buzz. So that might mean using traditional media. Nowadays, for your younger folks, it might mean using social media or maybe a combination of the two. And so again, you're going to stimulate interest or create a buzz by using the media or social media to stimulate interest. Promoter must utilize media buying. So promoter must utilize media buying. And so that's going to be important, whether it's just getting billboards or whether it's buying an ad in a newspaper or an ad in a magazine, or whether that means doing a radio spot or maybe a local TV spot. But the promoter must utilize or should utilize media buying. So that means either purchasing time, right, on a radio station or TV, or space in print, or space in billboards, or generating some sort of awareness through social media. Goal. So what is the goal? The goal is to make people aware in an efficient manner. So make people aware in an efficient manner. So you really have to understand, obviously, the demographics of your audience. Who is the target audience? Number one, based off of your age. And again, the other thing you have to really think about is the psychographics. Who is within this age group or even beyond age group? Who are the folks based on personality most apt or most likely to purchase the tickets? Media buying. So any questions on the goal to let people know in an efficient manner that in an efficient manner that this show is going to occur? And again, part of that goal of letting people know in an efficient manner is understanding the demographics, but also the psychographics of your target audience. So one of the big weaknesses of a lot of the papers that I read, at least for the first go around, you guys, whoever did the target audience didn't really dive into the psychographics. And psychographics is, almost as important, maybe some people would say even more important than the demographics, because people who think in a similar way oftentimes consume the same sort of similar media. So you got to figure out what the target audience is reading, what they watch, those sorts of things. Budget. So budget, really don't know. It just really depends. I think for this particular case study, I don't think they gave you a budget. If I remember correctly, I think the budget's zero. I don't really remember. If they did give you a budget, it was pretty low. But anyways, it's determined by similar shows. So if you're Live Nation or AEG or an outside promoter and you actually have the money to promote, which hopefully you do, it's determined on similar shows. So if you spent, let's say you did a blues concert and you spent $5,000. Well, next time for a blues show, you're going to budget $5,000. And so it's also determined by the rate of sales. So are you selling at a good clip, tickets at a good clip, at what you expect? Or are you selling tickets at a slower pace? That means you may have to do more promotion. Or are you selling tickets at a higher rate? In that case, the buzz is started, the buzz is out, and that means you probably don't have to spend as much for media. And so this is where, having milestones is really important. And so that's one point in your plan, is that you have to have milestones, right? Like goals that you want to, or I should say objectives or milestones that you should be meeting on your path to meeting your objective. And so the promotion person needs to have these milestones in his head or her head, going, okay, by the first week, I expect to sell 1,000 tickets. By the week 2, another 2,000 tickets, so on and so forth. And so if you're on that track, let's say the venue is, 5,000 seats, then that means over a span of 5 weeks, you should sell out. So anyways, you should always set your budget according to what is the best case scenario versus the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario obviously means that you're not selling tickets at a pace where you're going to sell it out. And of course, best case scenario means that you're selling more than you anticipate, and you're going to sell out before the show even is going to, before the day of the show. Number 3, timing of the promotion. So obviously there is this idea that there's this initial announcement of when the show happened, right? Or the tour, the dates that go on sale. So you have to make this initial a timing of promotion in terms of like figure out when you exactly start to promote the show. So do you start promoting the show 4 weeks before the date of the show? Do you start promoting the show 2 months before the show? It just really depends on the size of the venue and those sorts of things. So number 3 again is timing of the promotion. When do you exactly make the initial announcement of the show or the tour? How many days prior to the actual day of the show you put tickets on to go on sale? So something to consider. You don't want to wait too long, right? And sometimes you don't want to start too early because sometimes the buzz could die. So something to consider when it comes to the timing of the promotion is what else is going on in the market. So if you're just, a moderately successful band and you're planning to go on tour, and it just so happens that, the Weeknd is going to start announcing that he's going to go on tour, or he's performing in that market during those days, right? You probably are going to get drowned out by the fact that the Weeknd is performing in the market that day. So you probably don't want to make an announcement that tickets are going to go on sale in that market during the week that the Weeknd is performing in the market, right? Because you want to ideally stand out in the marketplace. You want to be the biggest buzz in the market. And if you're just a moderately successful band or even a good band, the weekend is hot. So, you're not going to stand in the marketplace if the weekend is performing in the market at the time that you want to make an announcement. Maybe you want to hold off on making that initial announcement. Number 4 is the role of the various players in conducting a promotion. So the role, number 4, is the role of the various players conducting a promotion. And so those are, right, local media plays a very important role in conducting a promotion. So for instance, right, you could, the local media can provide show reviews. So in other words, you can invite some of the local media, for instance, for the first day, maybe you're going to be performing in that market for a week, or maybe you're about to perform in that market. You can invite some of the local media, especially in Southern California, to provide you with a local show review. So in other words, they can say, oh, the weekend was awesome. You should go check him out, at this particular show. He brought so much energy that the people were just, going crazy and cheering and so on and so forth. And so local media can provide a good show review. Or they could do a good review of his music. So maybe the Weeknd or whoever, right, just dropped a new single or a new album or whatever, and so they can provide a good review of his recent songs. So that's critical also in a promotion. Or they can just simply make a recommendation. They can say, hey, the Weeknd or whoever is performing at this venue, go check them out. Tickets are still available, those sorts of things. So local media, again, can be critical in a promotion, just in terms of providing the show reviews, reviewing the music, and or just making recommendations. Sponsors can help to promote a show because, let's say it's Pepsi or Coke or somebody like that has money to spend on media. The sponsor could also spend time or buy time on media or buy billboards to help sell out a show. So the sponsor can play a critical role in promoting a show. The label can give you money to promote a show. And of course, agents can give you money as well to promote the show if you're, represented by Endeavor or somebody like that. Those 3 components can help promote a show beyond just local media. The venue in-house advertising agency can play a critical role in a promotion. This is why, if any of you decide to go into promotions, or even if you're for this assignment, don't forget about, does the venue have an in-house advertising team? I can't remember if they're performing at a venue, but if they do, right, did you contact, or as part of your plan, working with the in-house advertising team in that market? Because the venue's in-house marketing team or advertising team, they know the market way better than you do. And so they're able to identify the target market very quickly. They know who goes to go watch shows in their venue all the time. You can use their marquee. And also the in-house advertising team has a good relationship with the media, so they can contact the local, music journalists or entertainment journalists in the market and give you their contact. They can give you his contact or her contact, so you can contact and reach out to that journalist. Questions? So what is the most important step? It's step number one, again, provide initial information. That's the most important step. But all the other steps, of course, are all equally important. Well, not as important, but also important. Questions? So for a small venue promotions, generally speaking, not always, of course, the type of promoter is going to be generally an outside promoter. So again, most of the time for a small venue promotion, the type of promoter is generally going to be an outside promoter. So one of the pluses, of course, is of a small venue is that you have fewer tickets to sell. So that's good. Now the challenge is, generally speaking, this is changing somewhat, but the challenge is, generally speaking, it's a lesser known acts. So lesser known acts perform in small venues, generally speaking. And so that's the challenge, is that because people are not familiar with this particular performer or band, you might have a harder time selling this ticket. So what you want to focus on as a promoter, generally speaking, is that you want to focus on the experience, right? So for instance, you might say, well, you might focus that it's the only event going on Wednesday, for instance. So you might focus on the fact that this is the one and only event going on in the market on a Wednesday. You might focus on the genre. You might just say, well, this is the only jazz performer performing in the market on this date. So you might focus on the genre. You might focus on the venue. Some people like going to small venues because it's very intimate. So you might focus on the fact that, the venue is cool. So again, you might focus on the genre. You might focus on the venue. And you also might focus on the day of the week. So again, you're selling the experience of the fact that it's a unique genre, at least for that day, for that time, the day of week, it might be unique. And also the venue might be unique as well. So you're selling the experience. You're focusing on the experience. So clubs. So number one, or the first one right here, the first question is clubs. So the right act for the right audience is most critical. The right act for the right audience is most critical. So who exactly is the target audience based off of demographics and psychographics for that particular act? Another important component to club performances is media buying. So do you have the budget to do a little bit of media buying, whether that's a billboard, whether that's a newspaper, whether it's doing some sort of social media, something, but you may have to spend a little bit on media buying for a club, unless you're highly connected. So promoters, right, know their club better than the label, better than outside marketers. That's important to remember. If the promoter happens to be an in-house promoter. So again, promoters know their club better than the label or outside marketers. It's important to remember if the promoter is an in-house promoter. Number two is theaters, ballrooms, and performing arts. So you have to figure out who exactly is the target audience again. Again, psychographics, demographics. I keep repeating this. Who is the audience based off of your target audience, but also psychographics, right? Not every 18 to 34-year-old is going to want to go to watch a blues concert on a Wednesday? Who are those 18 and 34-year-olds, or who are those fans, regardless of age, who are going to go listen to a blues performer or a blues band on a Wednesday in Fullerton, for instance? What is the psychographics of that group? So part of it is also trying to figure out who are the super fans of this particular group, right? And that's part of the problem that John's created for your upcoming study, right? Who are these super fans that are going to buy, right, these NFTs? Who are these super fans that are going to do that? So you need to figure that out. So not only the demographics, but again, the psychographics. And then also trying to figure out, besides the target audience, is who can afford, what can they afford in terms of pricing? Can these fans afford a high price, or are they broke college students or high school students who don't have a lot of disposable income, and so therefore the pricing can't be so high for them? So right now, again, there seems to be a huge shift towards this idea of smaller or more intimate venues. So at one point in time, popular performers didn't like performing in venues that were small, but there does seem to be a trend towards these popular performers performing in venues of like 1,000 people, because it's very, very intimate. But then that also means that the price of tickets, if they're popular, also goes up because you're only selling 1,000 tickets. So large venue promotions. So the challenge is there's a large number of fans. So that means you have to sell a large number of tickets. So that's the first challenge, is how do you sell out a venue like the Rose Bowl that seats like 90,000 people, for instance? How do you sell that out? That's the challenge, is selling out a large venue, is being able to sell all the tickets. For some bands, it's not a big deal. It's not that hard. But for some bands, that's something to consider. Can you sell out a large venue like the Rose Bowl? The other big issue is safety. So for example, hopefully this works, my clip.
Fighting! Why are we fighting?
Number 6, Roskilde Festival. In an effort to get closer to the band, thousands made their way to the front of the stage while Pearl Jam was performing at Roskilde. The group's attempts to calm the crowd came too little, too late.
On the count of 3 steps back, please. 1, 2, 3. 1, take a step back. 2, take a step back. 3, please.
As a result, many people, including crowd surfers, were trampled under the human stampede, and the world lost 9 friends we'll never know. Number 5, Damageplan Tour. Due to the actions of paranoid schizophrenic ex-US Marine Nathan Gale, this heavy metal band's career was short-lived. Gale shot former Pantera guitarist Dimebag Darrell while he was on stage with his new band, Damageplan. He then fired into the crowd and killed 3 other people before police officer James Nigmeyer ended Gale's life. At least 7 more people were wounded.
He had his gun to his head. You had to do it. You saved a man's life.
Number 4, The Who Tour, 1979. A year after Keith Moon's death, The Who experienced more grief when 11 fans were crushed while trying to attend one of their shows.
Did they know that they were trampling on these people? Yes, they know. They were just trampling right on over them like they didn't care.
Mistaking sound check for the real thing, thousands of ticket holders rushed the unopened doors of the Riverfront Coliseum. The venue's inadequate crowd control methods and first-come, first-served festival seating also caused at least 26 other people to get hurt.
If it had happened inside the hall, I don't think I would ever play again.
Number 3, Love Parade. The tragic occurrences of 2010 ensured that this annual electronic dance music festival and parade would be no more. That year, the festival's popularity drew over 1 million people, despite a capacity of only 250,000. Unfortunately, 500 concertgoers were injured and 21 people died from being squashed or suffocated while using the overcrowded tunnel underpasses to get to the Love Parade. Number 2. John Davidson. One of the deadliest nightclub fires in American history prevented singer John Davidson from playing at the Beverly Hills Supper Club in 1977. That night, over 1,000 people were crammed into the main room where 2 comics were performing, and hundreds more were enjoying other events in the club's various halls and restaurants. As the patrons scrambled to escape the fire, they ended up blocking the exits with their bodies. Sadly, over 160 perished. Number 1. Great White. This hard rock band's headlining set was cut short after foam insulation inside the station caught fire because of pyrotechnics gone wrong. Within seconds, the 250-person capacity nightclub was engulfed in flames, and over 400 people were trapped inside. In the mad dash to the main entrance, over 200 were injured and 100 were killed, including Great White's guitarist Ty Longley. Despite these mishaps and other tragedies, like the Republica Cro-Magnon nightclub fire in Argentina and the Santika club fire in Thailand, concerts continue to be popular around the world.
So this leads to my point about what's the other challenge? Oh no. The other challenge is safety. So not only is the challenge of trying to figure out how to sell all these tickets that you have to sell, the second challenge for large venue promotions, besides selling tickets, is trying to keep people safe, right? And so I'll just talk about the Great White Concert just briefly. So one of the big issues with the Great White Concert that could have certainly prevented this from being a tragedy that it was, maybe people would have still died, but just not the number that actually did die. And so it could have been prevented if beforehand the venue had communicated or announced that there was multiple exits in the actual venue. So one of the reasons why so many people died is the crowd only thought there was only one exit when there was multiple exits. There was actually exits off to the sides of the stage. And so they could have exited that way as opposed to everybody piling up going through one exit. And so if there had been a little bit better communication between the venue and the crowd, maybe perhaps the amount of people who actually did die wouldn't have reached that number. But, I don't know. That's a tough one. But anyway, safety is still a challenge along with selling. So arena and stadiums. There's questions. Arena and stadiums. The venue and in-house marketing team often takes the lead in promoting a concert. So again, for a large stadium or arena, oftentimes the venue's in-house marketing team takes the lead in promoting a concert. And the reason that is the case is because, again, the in-house marketing team, whether it's a large venue or a small venue, generally speaking, they know the market better than the outside promoter. So again, the in-house marketing team will take the lead in promoting a concert. The reason that they're so efficient and effective is because nowadays the arena or stadium has a database of people who have gone to the venue, and so they've compiled that database so they can very easily, right, send out an email blast to everybody, and they can reach a large number of folks very quickly and very efficiently. And so again, if you're the outside promoter, it's very important, or you should make friends with the venue in-house marketing team So they'll do that for you. But again, they generally take the lead in promoting the concert. Number 2, or second bullet point here, is who do you try to target? So again, who do you try to target? Again, think about the demographics and psychographics. You need to figure out the super fans, right? Super fans are going to come. They're going to come regardless of how the price. They don't care about price. They're just going to come. And so you got to figure out who are these super fans. They will come regardless, and they're going to spend more money on their tickets. So again, demographics and psychographics. Who are these super fans? Number 2, the enthusiastic fans. So they're not super fans, they're enthusiastic fans. So that means they know a lot about the act. They follow the act's career. They may own a record or stream their music. And so generally speaking, they're a little bit more concerned about pricing than super fans are. Super fans will spend whatever. So those of you who go to Coachella to go see, let's say, Beyonce, you don't care about spending $500. So you might be a super fan for Beyonce, but there might be an enthusiastic fan who might say, I like Beyonce, I own her music, I really like her, I think she's cool, but I don't know if I'm going to spend $500 to go see her at Coachella. So, but they will pay more, a little bit more than normal. So you could elevate the prices a little bit more for the enthusiastic fan, but they are more price sensitive than the super fan. And then you have the familiar fan. So that'd be like me for Beyonce. I know some of her music, but I would certainly not call her, I would certainly not be a super fan, nor would I even be an enthusiastic fan. I'm familiar with her, but that's about it. So, I'm familiar with some of her music. I would be mildly interested. But price for me, or for a familiar fan, is important. So in other words, I could be priced out of going or wanting to go see her. So number 3, again, would be the familiar fan. Heard some of her music, mildly interested, but price is important. So you got to think of that, about these folks as sort of being the mass in some regards. And then down here at the very bottom is the casual fans. So I suppose you can think of the masses as being both the familiar and the casual. So there's the casual fans. They might have heard some of the music, but really the only reason they're going to pay to go to watch, let's say, a Beyonce or go to a Coachella or something like that is because they're going to go with their friends. They're probably the person that's more apt to go for the experience, the whole thing of hanging out with their friends, just to watch their friends be happy. Or maybe they just think it might be cool. So again, super fans, number 1, enthusiastic fans, number 2, the familiar fans, number 3, and then at the very bottom are the casual fans. So for an amphitheater, what's the challenge? The challenge is that events are taking place outdoors. So the challenge again is events are taking place outdoors. So the biggest concern always with amphitheaters is the weather. So I remember going to a concert many years ago, when I used to live out in DC, in Washington, DC. I went to this concert out it's kind of like in a park. It was pretty cool. Who was it? It was the Gypsy Kings, I want to say. So they were pretty cool. It was pretty exciting. But unfortunately, right in the middle of their act, we got hit by a huge thunderstorm. We got soaked. And so they had to stop the show because the wind was blowing so it was blowing so hard. And it was just, I mean, rain was just coming down in sheets and there was lightning coming down everywhere. It got actually kind of scary. And so, but in most places of the United States that get weather, not Southern California, the big challenge again is the weather. Now, the one thing that you can focus on when it comes to amphitheaters is going back to the experience is the fact that you can sell the idea of warm weather. This idea of, it's summer or late spring and it's warm outside. That's kind of cool. Anyways, two types of fans that go to amphitheater events. We have the artistic fans. Those are the ones, the artist fans, I should say. Think of them as sort of the super fans. They're going to want to reserve tickets and they're going to pay a higher price for tickets. So whatever you decide to charge these fans, they're willing to pay it for the most part. And then of course there's the casual fans, right? That's Puente. So I don't mind sitting on the lawn, having a glass of wine or whatever, or having a beer on the lawn as I'm listening to music. I don't need to be sitting up close to the stage. I'm very happy, even when I was young, to sit on the lawn and listen to the band. And so the casual fan will consider the ticket price, unlike the artist fan, who doesn't consider the ticket price, they're willing to pay more. The casual fan, like myself, would consider the price of the tickets before I decided to go. Festivals. So the trick or the challenge, one of the challenges is the idea of promoting several acts. That's part of the challenge. So you really need to think about the synergy between these various acts, right? So if you have, let's say, like a bluegrass band, you have a blues band, you have a country music band, maybe you even have a hip hop group, who knows? So you have all these different types of genres that are performing at the festival. You got to figure out some sort of synergy that ties all these various genres together. And so that's the challenge, right? Is figuring out a common thread between this country blues band and, let's say, hip hop band or hip hop group. So bullet point number 1, time between on sale and show date for the festival is often longer. So unlike, let's say, a stadium or a small venue, right? You can't just start selling out or promote the show, let's say 4 weeks in advance. You got to start promoting the show longer than, let's say, 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks or 8 weeks or something like that. So you need to start before, let's say, you would a small venue. Oftentimes, festivals are highly reliant on web-based marketing, and you're also relying on fans of the various acts. So one of the things that I actually posted on Canvas, if you guys can check it out, it might be helpful for your case study that you're doing for John, is that it talks about web-based or social media marketing, what's worked in the past in terms of social media. So it might be useful for some of you who want to win the contest, I suppose, that we're going to have next week. More pressure on the promoter. So for festivals, there's always a huge pressure on promoters, whether the promoter happens to be an outside promoter or whether or not that promoter happens to be a Live Nation or an AEG. There's immense pressure on the promoter to sell out these festivals, because festivals tend to be huge events. And so they need to spend more money in trying to sell out these events, because you need to sell a lot of tickets and you need to try to target a wide variety of fans, because think about the different types of fans that can vary across the spectrum depending on the genre of music that's going to be performing on that particular day. So venue, what are some of the venue revenue streams? So another way of thinking about the venue, sometimes the venue is also controlled by the promoter, sometimes not. And so what are these venue or promoter revenue streams? Number one is ticket sales, of course. So number one revenue stream or one revenue stream is ticket sales for the venue. Number two, the other revenue stream is concessions. So whether that's people buying, right, food or buying beverages, whether that's soft drinks or adult beverages, it's the concession sales, number two. The third type of revenue stream is sponsorships. So some sponsors want to be tied into the venue. So that's the third revenue stream is sponsors. Number four is VIP experiences. I want to see if I have this clip. So this would be an example of a VIP experience over, let's say, at a Coachella. So at a Coachella, right, they're going to charge you more to have sort of these VIP experiences at the venue or for the promoter. And so these VIP experiences is another revenue stream for the venue and or the promoter. Number five, the fifth revenue stream is parking. So again, number five is parking. And number six, the sixth revenue stream for a venue as well as a promoter, sometimes again they're the same, is merchandising. So again, number one, ticket sales. Number two, concessions. Number three, sponsorships. Number four, VIP experiences. Number five, parking. And number six is merchandising. Questions on types of deals, or I should say revenue streams? All right, so types of deals between the talent and the venue. Number one is a flat guarantee. So number one, flat guarantee. So the good part of a flat guarantee is number one, whether the show sells out or nobody shows up, you get the same amount of money. So obviously, if there's not a sellout, the flat guarantee is going to ensure you get paid regardless. So again, the flat guarantee, which is good because you're getting, secure money regardless if it's sold out or not, you're getting paid. But it's often less than the back end deal, which I'll talk about shortly. So that's the bad part. So generally speaking, the flat guarantee is used for free events, or it's used for fairs or festivals, or an event with multiple acts, or a club. So you're getting upfront money, a certain flat fee for performing. This idea of pay to play. So a flat guarantee again. Number one, flat guarantee. Number two is a back end deal. So number two is a back end deal. It's a negotiated amount based off of ticket sales. So it's a negotiated amount based off of ticket sales. And so this is where it's really important to have a good agent, but also have a good manager who really knows, the gross potential of the show. So in other words, right, if you're selling the average price of a ticket is $20 and the venue is 20,000 seats, right? You know that the gross potential of the show is $400,000. So you need to know what is the gross potential of the show and then negotiate accordingly your cut. So again, number 2 is a back-end deal that's negotiated after the show. So it's based off of ticket sales. So it takes some negotiation between whoever represents the talent, and of course, it's a negotiation between the venue. Number 3 is a straight percentage. So it's number 3, it's a straight percentage. And so the act's getting paid a percentage of the revenue generated at the concert. But it's based off of, again, ticket sales or revenue. So again, it's based off of the revenue or ticket sales. And so the act is getting a percentage of the revenue generated at the concert. It is a straight percentage deal. It's also considered to be a back-end deal. So number 1, flat guarantee. Number 2, a back-end deal. Number 3 is a straight percentage, which is also a variation of a back-end deal. Number 4, which is another variation of a back-end deal, is a per ticket deal. So again, per ticket deal. The act receives a specific dollar amount per ticket. So think of this on some level to be sort of a royalty deal, I suppose. So number 4 is a per ticket deal. The act gets a specific dollar amount per ticket sold, and it's another variation of a back-end deal. Number 5. Number 5 is a versus deal. So what happens in this is that you're taking the largest amount between the flat guarantee and whatever variation of the back-end deal you want to think about. So whether that back-end deal was a straight percentage, whether it was a straight up just back-end deal, or whether it was a per ticket deal, you're taking the largest amount between the flat guarantee and the percentage. So let's just say from the flat guarantee or guaranteed $250,000. And from the percentage, you ended up with generating potentially $200,000. Well, you're going to take the flat guarantee over the percentage. But let's just say hypothetically the percentage deal exceeds the flat guarantee. Let's say in this case it's $300,000. You're gonna opt for the percentage deal over the flat guarantee, and that's called a versus deal. So you take the largest amount between the flat guarantee, whatever that amount was, and the percentage or the variation of the back end deal. You take the larger dollar amount. And generally speaking, in a versus deal, number 5, only the biggest acts, right, can negotiate a number 5. And number 6. Now this is the creme de la creme. So this are the Beyoncés. These are the Weeknd. These are those sorts of caliber of groups. These are the 1%ers or the 2%ers, or whoever you think of the creme de la creme of the acts. They can negotiate what's called a plus deal. So plus deal. Number 6, plus deal. And only the creme de la creme can afford this or negotiate this act. Or this deal, I should say. So in this particular deal, you're getting a guaranteed paid up front. You're getting your flat guarantee, whatever that flat guarantee was. And then the promoter is deducting expenses, whatever they paid to promote the show. And they're going to get a back end percentage if there's a profit. So not only are they getting a guarantee up front, if there's a profit left over from the promoter, so let's say the promoter made money off the show after the promoter paid for everything, if they still made a profit, the act, the creme de la creme, can negotiate a portion of the promoter's cut. In other words, take a portion of their profit. So this occurs when the act exceeds a break even, whatever the break even was in the contract, and the promoter got a profit. So generally speaking, right, the promoter's going to get 15% of the cut. But sometimes, according to the contract, if the promoter makes a certain dollar amount, the promoter might only get 14% or 13% and give that additional 1 or 2% over to the talent. A particular deal. Now, on top of the plus deal, and this, I suppose this can apply to any of the deals that I just mentioned, is that there's a bonus, right? The talent buyer, whether that be Live Nation or AEG or an independent promoter that really wants this act to perform, they can always pay the talent a bonus, right? If they really want the act to perform at their shows. So this clip's pretty good in terms of talking about ticket pricing and making money on the concert business.
Has it changed? It's changed, obviously. It's been consolidated a lot. If we're talking about the big touring companies and the big concert promoters, they've consolidated. Touring has basically, been the same, but ticket prices have obviously gone up dramatically compared to actually expenses. Tickets, the cost of doing business is less than the revenue coming in. The change initially, if we can go back, artists used to play for flat fees. Then eventually, when they did that, like there was the Fillmore Auditorium, and Electric Factory, and Tea Party, and different venues that promoters owned, and they brought artists in on the new wave of artists. If we're going way back, so Bill Graham's probably the most famous at the Fillmores. They were playing flats. You play, you get paid. Then eventually, artists start figuring out that people are coming to see us. We should get paid more. So those rooms actually closed down because they could not afford those artists. That's what eventually happened. And they paid them much greater flats. And then eventually they started to do percentages. A little percentage of the door. Peter Grant, esteemed manager of Led Zeppelin, figured out people come see Led Zeppelin, they come see Led Zeppelin. They do not go see who's promoting the concert. They do not go see the venue that they're playing in. And because of that, we should have a much greater percentage. The percentages eventually got up to 90% of the gross box office receipts after all documented expenses, which meant that the band at the split point, or close to the break even, the split isn't always at the exact break even, made 90 cents on the dollar profit. So if we look at shows today, why are ticket prices high? Why do things cost so much? Most businesses where the profit ends up is the one who's driving ticket prices. So we can say it was, the promoter, and then we could talk about how that changed too. But no one's twisting someone's arm to take 90%, or no one's twisting someone's arm to take a guarantee of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, whatever it is. So ticket prices are up. But, are they up more than going to anything else? I don't think so. Buy a ticket to the World Series, you're going to pay it. Buy a ticket to the Ryder Cup, you're going to pay it. Buy a ticket to the theater, you're going to pay it. So everything is up. The biggest change, I guess, in the business, I should try to keep this shorter, was when Sillerman started a company called SFX and started buying concert promoters up. And what he did is he was purchasing all those businesses and putting them under one umbrella called SFX. He was purchasing also venues because the promoters owned the venues. And when you're paying 90% of the split to the artist, you better figure out somewhere you're going to make money. So if you own the venue, you can make money. And the reason that can happen is that the venues are sponsored. The venues have parking. The venues have what they call facility fees. The venues have what they call concessions. The venues, it just goes on and on and on. And so when you start adding that up, he's looking at this, he says, wow, I could sponsor, all these amphitheaters by Verizon from, all the way from Massachusetts to California, and phenomenal, multi-millions of sponsorship money. That goes to whoever owns the venue. There's other sponsors, we could talk about that. So he did that. He eventually spun it off and sold it to Clear Channel. And when Clear Channel started putting their brand on it, and everyone knows what Clear Channel is obviously from radio companies, which actually Sillerman originally was from. He was on the radio conglomerate too. They own now the concert business and the radio business, and 1,200 radio stations. And so they eventually realized that fans, because of like the internet, start to understand a little more about the business than they ever did in the past. And so they, fans were a little upset or thinking Clear Channel, because of Clear Channel's owning this, is it a monopoly or whatever? How this is all working out is this was driving the ticket prices all up. So there was kind of a backlash. So they spun it off and became Live Nation and used all the original names of the original promoters that Sillerman actually bought. And that's where it is today. So we're looking at this big umbrella here of this big touring concert promotion company called Live Nation that has touring companies and has database companies and concert promoters and everything that's necessary to have to run these kinds of business.
So he makes a really good point just in terms of as I was describing the deals, the types of deals, and I talked about the fact that nowadays the creme de la creme artists have the ability to negotiate those plus deals. So it used to be, right, traditionally the split used to be 85-15, and it's still, for normal acts, it's still an 85-15 split. But if it's Beyonce, if it's The Weeknd, if it's whoever, Taylor Swift, whoever you think of as creme de la creme, they can negotiate a deal that's better than an 85-15 split. As he was mentioning, it could be a 90-10 split where all the revenue that's made from ticket sales essentially goes to the artists. And so this is, again, one of the reasons why promoters got into the venue business, because they can make more money promoting concerts. Besides just a portion of the ticket sales, they can also make all the money that the venue can generate through concessions, parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Has it?
Any questions? Okay, so Does anybody know which performance rights organization started in 1914? This is kind of a review from 346. Crickets. Okay, so the PRO started in 1914. It was ASCAP. And so again, they monitors performance rights, whether it's live, taking place at a venue, whether it's broadcast going through some sort of radio or TV. And so they collect the licensing fees. They pay the publisher and the artists a royalty based on the amount of money they collect. It was founded by Victor Hubert. So ASCAP, for a while, it was a monopoly until BMI came along in 1939. I'm not skipping 1930, just I'm pointing out that 1939 BMI, at least in the United States, started, and BMI was started by music executives. They do essentially the same thing that ASCAP does. So BMI was started in 1939, and ASCAP was started in 1914. More or less the same thing. I know there's probably differences in terms of how they promote or work with songwriters or work with artists. I'm sure it differs. And in the middle, 1930, was SESAC. SESAC works primarily with British artists. It's primarily a British organization that does the same exact thing that ASCAP and BMI does, except they represent British artists. Okay, so one last thing about streaming. I know they were going to talk about this in your case study. I think streaming is part of it. I don't remember anymore. But anyways, if you're not familiar with streaming, what's happened is that the streaming services have been forced to pay large chunks of their revenue towards royalties. Some would say that this is being pushed by the NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters, that represents traditional radio stations. And so many people point to this as sort of being unfair, and I think it probably is, despite the fact that I do believe that life is unfair, but this is really kind of unfair. So anyways, streaming services pay 60 to 70% of their revenue. This is why a lot of streaming services have not broken even. But one of the big critiques of streaming services is the fact they don't pay well, as you can see here, right? If it takes a lot of money or a lot of streams for you to make, as an artist, a little bit of money, I believe that if you multiplied 0.00318 and you multiply that by, I think, 1,000, I think that's 31 cents, I want to say. My math is, I'm a comp professor, not a math professor, but I think that's 31 cents. Anyways, it takes a lot of streams to generate a significant amount of revenue. So this is one of the critiques that's going on in the music industry. So anyways, the three fees that they're paying, the streaming services are paying a mechanical license fee. So I guess because it's in a digital form, the music, they have to pay a mechanical fee to the publisher. So that's one fee. They got to pay a public performance license. to a blanket license to Sound Exchange. So they're paying a public performance license, a blanket license to Sound Exchange, and they're paying fees to the recording artists. And that's the biggest fee. The biggest fee they're paying of the three fees is that they're paying the biggest portion is they're paying to the recording owner's fee. That's the biggest portion. As you can see there, 57% of the revenue, the fees, is going to the recording artists. Okay, so today, this is the last part of the class. It's on travel. Please watch the rest, obviously the rest of the lecture on Wednesday. I'm only going to get through maybe one slide of this on travel, or two slides maybe. For some of you, this might be the last lecture of your life, so congratulations. So anyways, travel. So the travel life cycle. There's 7 different stages of the tourism life cycle. Number 1 is exploration. So what happens at this stage is that usually there's very few tourists in exploration. It's kind of hidden. It's off the beaten path, right? And so it's kind of in those, if you ever think of a virginal beach, although those are kind of few and far between nowadays, but there's very few tourists during the exploration stage. There's something unique attached to this particular place. Maybe it's a beach, maybe there's ruins nearby, something like that. But there is something unique to the location, but a few tourists are attracted to something unique. So again, it could be something like a ruin, an indigenous culture ruins, or a beach or something like that. There's little to no tourism infrastructure. In other words, may not even be a road there. So if you want to get there, you're probably going to have to hike to get there. There's no hotel or motel or anything like that. If you're going to spend the night there, you're going to have to sleep in a sleeping bag. So you have to bring a tent because there's no tourism infrastructure. And so there's very little community impact. So if there happens to be a community nearby, there's little to no impact on the community during the exploration stage. Involvement. So involvement means that local residents begin to cater to tourists. So this means that, tourists residents are starting to notice the nearby community. Hey, there's starting to be a steady flow of tourists coming to this secluded beach or this secluded location that has ruins of indigenous culture. Maybe we should start catering to these tourists. And so maybe, right, the local community starts to put a little bit of pressure on the local government to create some infrastructure. So maybe better markings on the trail, maybe a better road to get to that particular location, something, right, to help with the infrastructure. Number 3, development. So we have local residents start to lose control during development. So again, number 3, local residents start to lose control at this stage. So maybe, right, a big hotel company decides to move in, for instance. So maybe a chain of restaurants decides to put a restaurant nearby, like a McDonald's or something like that. I don't know. But again, local residents begin to lose control of the industry. International organizations take root. So organizations take root, like a Hilton or a McDonald's or something like that, it starts to become mainstream and negative impact potentially. So again, local residents begin to lose control of the industry. International organizations take root. It becomes mainstream, and there's negative impact potentially. So people start taking stuff off the ruins. Maybe they start putting graffiti on the ruins. Maybe that virginal beach it starts to harm the habitat. Wildlife gets impacted. If there's some sort of coral reef in the area, maybe that starts getting impacted. Those sorts of things. Number 4, consolidation. This is where it's a well-developed tourism destination. You now have more tourists than residents. It's totally saturated. So development slows down because it's saturated. The local residents are no longer happy. So, and during number 2, they kind of like the idea of tourists. By number 4, they're tired of tourists. So if you think of a place like Cancun at one point in time was off the beaten path. Cancun is now totally consolidated. I remember I went to Cancun like 25 years ago, and before I was, totally saturated. I'm sure if I went to Cancun now, I wouldn't recognize it. Yes, you can think of it as gentrified, Willa, in terms of development. Yes, you can certainly think of gentrification as a form of development. That's actually happening a lot in Southern California, where they're taking sort of these areas, right? These ethnic communities, and it's sort of being gentrified to sort of cater to tourists. And so this is happening in parts of Southern California. Tourism lifestyle. So number 5, we have stagnation. So stagnation means essentially that peak numbers have been reached. There are now some significant economic, social, and environmental issues. So for instance, the economy might be suffering in that local community by now because it's totally saturated. There might be some social issues between the tourists and the residents. There might be some environmental issues where the number of tourists have significantly impacted that area. And so maybe new attractions are being built because the initial attractions are no longer charming. That could happen, may not happen, but that could happen. So stagnation can take 2 paths. It can take the path of decline. So for instance, they could take this path, right? And so this stagnation with decline, this is a picture of the Himalayas. And one thing that's happening in the Himalayas is that because more and more people want to hike up Mount Everest, and there's an economy that's around that nowadays, what's happening is that people on their way up to the mountain are leaving behind a lot of trash. And so you see this cleanup effort that's happening in Nepal to try to sort of clean up the amount of trash that's being left behind by these crews, by these group of people that are trying to make their way up Mount Everest. And so this would be an example of stagnation decline. So there's a rapid decline or a gradual decline of the habitat or the area. And so this is something that might be impacting Nepal. Locals began to buy back tourism businesses during stagnation. Or it could be a stagnation that leads to rejuvenation. This is an example of Costa Rica. So Costa Rica, at one point in time, was headed down the path of Nepal, potentially. Could have been going down the path of decline. And so rejuvenation in this place took place in Costa Rica because the government and the community really got involved, and they basically redesigned their economy. And so they redeveloped the destination through corporate and government involvement. So again, they redeveloped the destination through corporate and government involvement, or developing a new tourism attraction, whether it's a new stadium, a new theme park, a new casino. So another example of stagnation that leads to rejuvenation, if you think about downtown San Diego. Downtown San Diego is kind of an example of that. Downtown San Diego was going down a path of decline, and it was going down a path of decline. I don't know if anybody remembers downtown San Diego. And so what downtown San Diego did, part of it, was they decided to build a new stadium in downtown San Diego, or near downtown San Diego, called Petco. That area, Petco Park. That area around Petco Park has been rejuvenated because the city of San Diego decided, hey, let's build a park in this area to rejuvenate the area, the local economy. This is also happening. It's also happening with Detroit. Detroit has decided to build casinos, for instance, in downtown Detroit to rejuvenate the economy. New York City is starting to build casinos in the downtown area to rejuvenate the local economy. So, right, tourism can take the path again. You can go from stagnation to decline, like what's happening with Nepal, or you can choose the route of Costa Rica that could lead to rejuvenation, which is also the path that Detroit's trying to take, that New York City's trying to take, and that San Diego took.